My name is Denny, draftee Army, combat Vietnam. I flew to Vietnam with 300 people I didn't see before or since. Spent my 27th birthday there. I was the old guy, only college graduate, only one who had held a job beyond high school. And I'd had to pack up the stuff for some of those guys. I wrote letters to some of those families to tell them the answers to the questions I knew they had of what was my son like and how did he get along with his unit and what happened the day he died. No one told me that at some point I would probably want to grieve the loss of those kids. And no one told me that Agent Orange was more than an herbicide. So we had, the Vietnam War was the war that kept on giving. That it was not over when we got discharged. There were a lot of health things that were ignored and because they didn't pop up. What Vietnam took from me was the hope that anything was going to be positive or good or better. After I came home, I never lived in the same place longer than a year. And I never held the same job longer than a 9-month teaching contract. And I never had the same relationship with the same group of people or the same woman for longer than 5 or 6 months. Because the need was just to move. If I could keep moving, I'd be okay. I couldn't find any professional help that was really knowledgeable about war or about soldiers or about veterans. And I didn't have health insurance, so the plans were really limited. And I couldn't really get plugged in. And the only thing that helped was to drink. So I drank for 10 years. I mean, that's so bad that I needed to have a certain amount of alcohol in my body so I would feel, quote, normal. It was very hard to talk to people who had not been in the military and had no idea of just the basic stuff, let alone combat. In the summer of 1980, there was a story in the Washington Post about a young psychologist who was trying to do family therapy. And he found in trying to do family therapy that there was always a Vietnam veteran in the background. It's either a husband or a brother or an uncle or somebody who's having a real impact on that family dynamic. So he thought maybe he could do something if he just got to the core problem by identifying and working with Vietnam veterans. So I went and I interviewed, talked to the guy, and agreed that I would enroll. The first meeting, I had 3 gin and tonics before I went to the meeting just to be at ease. And the first thing the psychologist said was, for the purposes of our work together, you really need to come here without drugs or alcohol in your system. We had a group of a dozen veterans, various services, all Vietnam, almost all combat. And it was the first time I had a peer group of people who had shared experience. At the end of those 12 weeks, my drinking had curtailed quite a bit. I made a phone call to the DC office of Alcoholics Anonymous. So he said, well, that's good. You ought to come and check out a meeting sometime. In fact, we have one at noon. When I announced I was new, they changed direction and they told the stories of how they'd gotten to AA. And I had a great aha, said that fit me. That was it. I haven't had a drink since February 22nd, 1981. It was still obvious I had more work to do, but I didn't know exactly what that was. So I went and I checked out this therapist. And I liked her, and I liked what she did with the group. So at the end of that session, whatever it was, 6 sessions or something, I asked her if she would consider working with me individually. And I worked with her for 3 years. It was 3 years. But she taught me a great deal about what I needed to look at. I've done volunteer work at Walter Reed 4 years. Once a week I conducted an hour alcohol education class. And since March of '07, I've been part of a group of sober people, sober vets, who have brought an AA meeting there. To be sober, it really helps to be in a sober environment where other people are sober. And other people think it's important to be sober. Because that's what worked for me, and that's what would have worked for a lot of the guys I've seen over the past 5 years.